United we're as strong as a mountain. United we...
This is Steve Zelzer with Workweek, and this year is the anniversary of the Charleston 5 struggle in Charleston, South Carolina. It was a very important historic struggle of longshore workers in the port of Charleston against a union busting attack, and it was a success in fighting back that attack. And joining us is Jack Heyman. He is a retired member of ILWU Local 10 and was involved in building national and international support for the Charleston dock workers. Welcome to our show, Jack.
Good to be here, Steve.
So, Jack, why don't you talk about what happened in Charleston and what this anniversary means and what its significance is for workers today?
Sure. Well, to begin with, let me say that this is the 25th anniversary of the Charleston struggle. That started in January of 2000, and it became one of the most significant struggles in the 21st century, that is labor struggles. And the Longshore Union here on the West Coast has had two big struggles since the 2000. One was Charleston, and the other was fighting the grain companies up in the Northwest. The one in Charleston was significant because it came right on the foottails of the Liverpool dock worker struggle. The Liverpool docker struggle helped to make the Charleston struggle an international struggle. So what happened in Charleston was, it's a right-to-work state, like most of the southern states. And so the employer had a contract, the employer being Nordana Lines, had a contract with the union. And they just ripped it up and went with a non-union, that's a scab company, ILWU Stevedoring Incorporated, and they proceeded to load their ship with scab cargo. Shortly after the Liverpool dockers struggle, once again, the significance there was that we made international contacts through the Liverpool dockers struggle. Local 10 got a report about this struggle in Charleston where 600 state riot police attacked the picket line of 150 longshoremen. Now, what caught my eye, I was reading the New York Times, and I saw this picture of black and white longshoremen fighting together to defend their picket line against an outrageous police attack. They had helicopters, they had troop carriers, they had dogs, they had automatic weaponry. This was the riot police. And we found out that the riot police were not only called to suppress the strikers in Charleston, but the day before they'd been in the capital. Columbia is the capital of South Carolina, and there was a demonstration of 50,000 people to demand that the Confederate flag of slavery be brought down. It was on the Capitol building. And so those same riot police, they're called the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLED. And SLED not only attacked strikers in Columbia, but the following day, they were armed to the teeth. It was class warfare like we haven't seen in this country in a long time. And I took that to the executive board of Local 10, made a report on it, and the executive board decided that we needed to extend our solidarity with these striking workers. And Lawrence Thibeaux, who was president, and I was on the executive board, were flown out in very quickly to join them on the picket line to support them. When that report came back, the union got a full report from Lawrence. When he saw the amount of state police, military forces lined up against the strikers, he immediately called Jim Spinoza, who's president of the ILWU, the international president, and said he wants to bring the president of the local ILA Local 1422 from Charleston to explain their situation to the caucus. Now, a caucus is kind of like a convention of the Longshore division of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union. And Spinoza said, and he was with his vice president, Bob McElrath, and they both said, this is an internal matter for the ILA. We don't want to get involved in that. But Lawrence, to his credit, recognized that this was an important struggle, and that if that is, the ILA president, wasn't going to back them, then we, who adhere to the slogan of injury to one is an injury to all, we were hell-bent on giving them that support. So when Spinoza said, no, we don't want to get involved in this, Lawrence's response was, I'm inviting him. He defied the international president. And Spinoza put up no argument after that. So this is where the fight to save the Charleston longshoremen, to defend them against union busting, began. Because once Ken Riley came to the caucus,
And Ken Riley was the president of the local at
yeah,
that
he
time.
was the president of Local 1422. And he came to the local, and when the delegates from all 29 ports on the coast heard his report, they enthusiastically got on board. I mean, everybody who hit the mic was ready to go to war. I mean, these brave picketers, black and white longshoremen, didn't have much of a chance against 600 riot police. But what we brought with us was not just the Longshore Division, but as it turned out, after the caucus was our actual convention of the entire union. And again, Ken Riley's report met with enthusiasm like I hadn't seen in years. And so the union got behind the Charleston Longshoremen, not only for financial aid, but we decided we're going to support them by spreading the word. And the word spread pretty rapidly. Now, here's the problem. Because his own union bureaucracy refused to back him, and they said that this was an illegal strike, and therefore they didn't want to support an illegal strike because the union could get fined, and they wanted to protect the union treasury against any kind of sequestration. So the big fight initially was against the union bureaucracy. And we've seen this film before. Just a few years before, the Liverpool dockers were faced with the exact same problem. They were striking in Liverpool, and the general secretary of the Transport and General Workers Union, Bill Morris, who was the top official in that union, said that they couldn't support the Liverpool dockers because it was an illegal strike. The same thing that John Bower said to the Charleston longshoremen. And of course, the Liverpool dockers strike became internationalized because Bill Morris, the general secretary, blocked any kind of support from the Trade Union Congress and even internationally through the International Transport Workers Federation. So they had no other recourse than to seek support for their struggle internationally. They called an international conference, I think it was February of 1996. Well, that was history in the making. And we had the best, most militant dock workers, locals in the world, from Sweden, from Greece, from Italy, from South Africa, the UK, just about every major dock workers union except the ILA on the East Coast of America. In the long run, the Liverpool dockers lost. And for that defeat, their general secretary, Bill Morris, was awarded a seat in the House of Lords for his betrayal of the Liverpool dockers. And I would encourage people that are interested in that struggle to read an amazing book written by Mike Carden, who was one of the leaders of the Liverpool dockers. It's the Liverpool dockers, a history of betrayal and rebellion. And it gives an excellent account of the Liverpool dockers struggle.
And you were able to intervene to support that strike. I mean, they did give $50,000, the union, which is a contribution, but you were actually able to affect solidarity and to help win that strike. How did that happen?
What happened is, because of that conference that you and I and many others from around the world attended, I made good friends with the leader, the general coordinator of La Coordinadora in Barcelona, in Spain. And I found out from the Liverpool Dockers webmaster, Greg Dropkin, that the scab ship that was loaded in Charleston was going to Valencia, Spain. And he had the name of the ship. And so obviously the point of this struggle at the right as it began was to be able to stop scab cargo. So I immediately emailed Julian Garcia, who was the general coordinator of La Coordinadora, and asked him for support. At that point, the ILWU was not a member of this new militant international organization called the International Dock Workers Council. And there were many people that wanted the ILWU, wanted us to join the IDC, as we called it. And so I said, Julian, I know you want very much for the ILWU to be an affiliate of this new organization, but what you've got to do, you have got to show by example what the difference is between the IDC and the ITF. The ITF was a humongous organization of transport workers. At that point, they claimed, I think, 5 million. Today, they claim a membership or affiliates of 20 million. But in any case, Julian said, I got it, Jack. I'm gonna show the West Coast longshoremen, the ILWU, what the difference is between us and the ITF. And he went up the gangway as soon as the ship docked in Valencia. And he said to the captain, there's no way we are going to load this scab cargo. It's not with the work was done by strikebreakers, and this is unsafe for my men to work this ship. And we won't work any ship that comes out of Charleston unless it's loaded by professional, that's the word he used, professional longshoremen. And so the captain got the words and he went down the gangway to a landline and called the ship owners, gave them the demand of the Charleston longshoremen, and they had a contract within 48 hours. That's the way real international labor solidarity works. Now, that was a short-term victory. They got a contract. Those ships were going to be worked by longshoremen. But 5 of the longshoremen who were picketing on January 20th and attacked by the riot police were brought up on charges. And that's what hung over their heads, not only their heads, but the local. And so a campaign was begun. And the first to come to Charleston to offer our support was the ILWU. And it was a magnificent campaign. We brought it first and foremost to the California State AFL-CIO and Art Pulaski, who was the head at the convention, supported the resolution for the state AFL-CIO to support the Charleston longshoremen. From the state, then, it went to John Sweeney, who was president of the AFL-CIO nationally, and it got their support. Now we're already going into the next year, so this struggle started in 2000. In 2001, we began to accumulate support from not just dock workers, but unions, all different kinds of unions. And the date for the trial for the Charleston Five was set for sometime in November. But in any case, we had planned, and this is the important part, with Ken Riley and the leadership of his local, we had planned a march on the state capitol to demand freedom for the Charleston Five. And the 5,000 trade unionists from across the country all converged on Columbia. They'd never seen a labor demonstration of that magnitude ever before. This is a non-union state where I think something like only 4% of the workforce is actually unionized. But there were 5,000 trade unionists from across the country that marched. And what we faced was a police force, not just the riot police, but they had sharpshooters up on the Capitol and other buildings, government buildings, sharpshooters, because they were afraid that someone from this massive march was going to climb up the flagpole and tear down the Confederate flag. Actually, I think a couple longshoremen from the West Coast were thinking about that. But it wasn't a smart move given the fact that they have sharpshooters, because there would have been some people seriously injured, if not killed. So, but here's the importance of that march. By the time that march came, it was like about a year and a half since the first picket line. And John Bowers, the president of the ILA, wasn't getting on board for the Charleston Longshore Local. Now, this is kind of interesting because he was being a hypocrite. During the Liverpool dockers strike, John Bowers, who happens to be Irish American, and a lot of the Liverpool dockers were Irish, he actually had his longshoremen honor a picket line in a horrendous snowstorm in December of 1996. And that was the first really big boost internationally for the Charleston longshoremen. So Bowers did the right thing when it came to supporting dock workers in another country. But he was a hypocrite because he didn't even support his own members. Why? His reasoning was it was an illegal strike. That's the same thing that Bill Morris called the Liverpool dockers strike. He labeled it as illegal, and therefore the union couldn't risk supporting it. Of course, there's no House of Lords in this country, so John Bowers couldn't get appointed, but he did everything he could in the best scenario of class collaboration, of trying to undermine at every move to stop support for the Liverpool dock workers. And so there was some underhanded support from the locals in the South. So just to give you an accurate picture, I know it's hard to believe, but this, in the 21st century, the locals from Virginia down to Texas, the slave states, are still overwhelmingly Black longshore locals. The clerks locals, that is the checkers, the one who do inventory and sit in an office, or they're out on the docks checking off the cargo, they are almost solidly white in every port. And the union bureaucracy is controlled by the white checkers locals. You don't find the black longshoremen actually properly represented. I think they have one or two officials at the national level. Um, anyway, Bowers finally came around when he saw the entire national AFL-CIO was backing the Charleston longshoremen, and he actually spoke at Columbia at the rally. But I have to say, while he was speaking, a number of longshoremen were yelling, "Shut it down! Shut it down!" It was amazing. It was really amazing. So that's kind
So
of
the relevance today, I mean, what does this all mean for today, for the workers' struggle today in the United States and internationally?
well, let me put it this way. There is a conflict between labor and capital, between the workers and the employers. And the only way in a global economy that the workers can defend their interests, to fight back against the employers, is by having international solidarity. Uh, it wasn't sufficient for the Liverpool dock workers because they weren't able to get support in their own country. But in today's anti-labor climate, the best way to get support is not only having workers in your own country support your struggle, but also internationally, because the economy is global. And so we have a struggle going on today in Longshore. The East Coast ILA president, Harold Daggett, supported Donald Trump. He and his son Dennis, who now heads up the International Dock Workers Council, both are shown in a picture in Mar-a-Lago. They flew down to Mar-a-Lago to get a photo op with Donald Trump. This is not the way for labor. What Trump did, he promised to help the ILA out and wouldn't let the employers automate. We'll see where that goes. He's with the employers. He's with the billionaires. So there's nothing going to happen there. But what Trump did, as soon as he got inaugurated, one of his first moves was to impose tariffs, very high tariffs that immediately affected work of longshoremen, mostly in the West Coast. Longshore work in the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach were down by almost 50%. That's a tremendous loss in opportunity, work opportunity. On the East Coast, it was down, I think, something like 20%, depending on the ports. But if this tariff, raising high tariffs continues, it's going to mean that the East Coast will also be heavily affected. So what we have is a struggle that's not only economic in terms of the trade unions fighting the employers, but it's political. So, we celebrate Bloody Thursday on July 5th because seven dock workers up and down the coast were killed during the 1934 strike, killed by police. And so we celebrate that. Every port on the West Coast is closed on Bloody Thursday. So what we clearly need is for workers to stand together. And so the strike now, today, is the ILW slogan that we use not only on Bloody Thursday, but every day. Our slogan is, "An injury to one is an injury to all." Well, the workers that are most directly affected right now are immigrant workers. And there was a 25th anniversary celebration in Charleston. So if they learn the lesson that we need to stand together, that an injury to one is an injury to all, doesn't just mean longshoremen. It means other groups in the working class, and particularly immigrant workers. Steve, I don't know if you heard about this, but right before the 25th anniversary celebration, ICE, plainclothes ICE with masks, raided a nightclub in Charleston. Actually, it was North Charleston. Of the over 200 patrons at the facility, 80 of them were arrested by ICE. And what's needed is for the unions to start to take actions. Now, the ILWU International just last month put out a statement criticizing ICE and their treatment of protesters who are protesting ICE raids. And Los Angeles was probably one of the spotlights for this confrontation between ICE and protesters against these brutal raids by ICE. And the leader of the largest union in California, Dave Huerta, was beat up by ICE. It's on film. He went unconscious, bleeding. They had to take him to the hospital. That's what elicited a response from the International about ICE raids. And so while the International put out an excellent statement opposing these very repressive ICE aids, what's really needed is action. If we put those words into action, we would have strikes in the ports around the U.S. The problem is you got the East Coast ILA supporting Trump and supporting his policies. So if we did an action, we'd have to appeal to all the ILA locals and take a stand together, refusing to work on a given day or days to defend the rights of immigrant workers and to oppose the vicious attacks by ICE squads. I think it could happen.
Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us. We've been talking with Jack Heyman, retired ILWU Local 10 member and a activist, international activist, talking about the 25th anniversary of the Charleston 5 struggle and its relevance today. So thanks for joining us.